The bend is done, the mountain awaits, and the finals aren't far away. There is a lot to talk about on this episode. We've got another classic car, we've got top 5 of TCM, and a whole pile to chew through. It's time to start on the Undercut. This is the Undercut, once again brought to you by Shell OTR. What a weekend they had last weekend at the Bend. They were all over V8 Sleuth's coverage of the AirTouch 500, the first of the Ryco Enduro Cup races at Shell V-Power Motorsport Park. Great to have Shell and OTR together with us, delivering premium fuel and convenience to Australians nationwide. And it's also great to have City Rural Insurance Brokers once again back with us for episode 3. We've got a classic car in the show, a very controversial classic car in the show today. One of the most successful V8 supercars of all time. A big thanks to Andrew Bender and his team at City Rural for getting on board. On the panel once again this week, two of the drivers who were in the thick of the action at the Bend last weekend. Jack Perkins, James Moffat. We're back for Ep 3. Tell me in 25 words or less on the back of a postcard how your weekend's rolled. Moff, how are things in the Castrol rig?
Speed-wise, very promising, but the fact is a costly error by myself in the race hurt us in terms of our track position, so ultimately 9th at the end of the race, but our speed was probably better than that.
Were you taken surprise when Mark Winterbottom launched a move? I mean, two team cars running together, we always get a little bit edgy. It looked like he caught you by surprise with that move at the last
Well, based on the pre-race conversations, a little bit by surprise, but that's part of racing, so you live and you learn, and it's in the back of the memory bank for Bathurst in a couple of weeks' time.
Of course, the fight continues to keep Thomas Randall in the finals contention. Of course, there's one race before we determine top 10 in the points. The 55 car looking the goods there at the Bend. Jack, number 7, Snowy River Caravans car. If you look at the paperwork, started 17, finished 17. Sounds like a bit of a boring weekend, but how are things from inside that car?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could have been a better weekend. I sort of got beaten around a bit at the start of the race and struggled with the aggression levels, so I need to pick up my game, and the pace wasn't strong either. James was quite strong.
Well, that's a good look. That's one of your best looks.
That's as I was about to go and rob a servo by the look of it. Yeah, James got his head around the car really good in the last stint, and the pace was quite strong for JC. So we just need to take the positives to Bathurst now and hopefully have a better result because I think the ingredients are all there. We're working closely with Walkinshaw's in the deal that Blanchards have, and yeah, hopefully we can improve from there.
It's an interesting one this time of year. Did you feel like you were pre-prepped better than previous years? You've done all that NASCAR stuff. Did you feel in a better place than you would be normally September in 2024, 3, 2?
Yeah, I think, if I look back at my 10 years now of co-driving, this year's probably been the most prepared I've ever been. I've worked incredibly hard on my fitness levels and dropped a lot of my weight, which was all what I wanted to do to try and sharpen up for the NASCAR stuff. I've raced 3 times now in total in America, 2 NASCAR races, but the amount of simulation work that I did with the NASCAR program and Joe Gibbs Racing, we did 5 times the race lengths for each track. So I just feel like I've done so much driving preparation that I was best prepared, but it just didn't translate for me, unfortunately. So, yeah, not back to the drawing board, but working incredibly hard between the Bend and Bathurst just to get on top of my own game, and I know the team are working pretty hard as well.
There's a lot of big topics to sink our teeth into, and for that, here are the burning questions. Righto, lads, when we spoke last show, we did ask the question, was the Bend going to be a snooze fest? My question on this show is, was the Bend a snooze fest? Were we right or wrong?
I think we were pretty well on the mark there with that one, Noons, unfortunately. You're right, we did sort of predict that, especially without the influence of any weather throughout the race, that there was the potential for it to be rather processional, and probably apart from a few moves early on in the race when the co-drivers were in the cars, that's exactly how it played out. So that's just the nature of the circuit and the way these cars race the circuit and drive on the circuit, to be honest. So it's certainly not a knock on the Bend facility or anything like that. It's just how Gen 3 is at the moment, and the fact that we didn't see any safety car periods as well just meant that there was quite a big spread in the field by the end of 500 kilometres.
Well, it was announced over the weekend that there is 3 more years of the Bend 500. A deal's been put in place. So we're going back there for 2026, 7 and 8. So what can be done to make the racing potentially better? We can't have 3 more pre-Bathurst lead-up races that are snooze fests, because we need an exciting lead-up to the biggest race of the year that everyone's going to watch.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, Noons, because obviously the Sandown 500 had so much history, and it was always the kind of preliminary final for Supercars, and there's so much history there with all that and the retro rounds and everything. But now we've got the Bend for 3 years, so we need to look forward and not back to Sandown. I think, potentially having mixed tyre compounds could influence some difference in the racing, which, let's be honest, Formula One have that at every Grand Prix, so they know they can't have decent races with one tyre compound, and they spend a hell of a lot more money than Supercars.
But it seems every time we put more variables in, it's a smart pit lane. Everyone figures out the best way to get there. So we allowed co-drivers to start the races, or main gamers if you wanted to do that. They changed the fuel capacity. They've changed the minimum co-driver lap time. And here we were with everyone playing the game exactly the same, except for Erebus with the Cooper Murray car. So you change all these things with the view that it gives an idea and an opportunity to do different stuff, and no one does it.
Well, and it's hard, Noons, because I think if you look back on the race now with the amount of field spread that there was, and the pace of the race was back a lot from where we were in practice.
It's like a Phillip Island 500 used to be.
It is, but I think if you went back and did the race tomorrow, a few more teams would probably start the main drivers, knowing that the field spread was so big that the track position that you could gain at the start of the race would give you a big dividend at the end of the race, if indeed you qualified out of position. If you're starting on the front row, I don't think you would have changed the race too much, but I think it's the old comeback Monday. What would you do differently? And I'd like to think that, next year's Bend 500 will be a bit more entertaining.
It was a surprise not a surprise to see some divergent strategy, but clearly the four-stopper didn't work, which Walkinshaw's put their sort of, they played that game, and the safety car that they needed to make that work didn't come through. But it was one of those scenarios where I was surprised. I genuinely had a feeling that for Matt Stone Racing with Cam Hill and Cam McLeod on the front row of the grid, there was an opportunity there to put Cam Hill in the car, to take the pressure off Cam McLeod, who did a pretty good job, all things considered. He did slip off the road, but he wasn't the only one to do that at the Bend. But I thought there was an opportunity to grab that track position early for them, maximise starting on the front row of the grid, a place that, let's face it, in Enduros, MSR hasn't been before, and just take some of the pressure off McLeod when he got in the car. The race was in rhythm. He wouldn't have been in hand-to-hand combat with 2 or 3 or 4 guys. I was actually genuinely surprised. Were you surprised?
Yeah, it's a good point, Noons, because I guess in hindsight, it's easy to say, but you look at the strategy that the 99 adopted with starting Cooper Murray, that really could have played into the hands of Car 4 if they elected to start with Cam Hill, put McLeod in after a stint, and more than likely he would have been hopping in probably very close to the front of the field, if not at the front of the field. Clean air, lot less pressure than having to go through that whole start procedure. Let's not forget that he was starting on the front row against Jamie Whincup. So
who was rusty though? He's not Jamie Whincup of 2009, 10, 11, 12 here. He hadn't raced all year and had already made a mistake in practice. So there was an opportunity there to take on a really big name player at the best time to take him on.
Yeah, but I guess probably fundamentally what it shows you is the psyche of the teams in a way. To choose to start the co-drivers, it's still all about being able to get the co-driver out at the earliest possible time.
It's an engineer's decision,
exactly
isn't it?
right.
Yeah.
So,
but it's also, and that's very critical for those that are watching at home, it's the minimum numbers. The problem with starting your main driver is the risk of getting 3/4 of the way through the race, having a safety car, and neither driver's completed the minimums. Then you are absolutely done. So that's why the most conservative approach is to put the co-driver in, get him out of his laps, and then put the main driver in. So maybe there's a little rule tweak there that could be done so that it opens up the options with that, because at the moment it's just too risky to get to lap 70 and have neither driver done the minimum laps and have a safety car. Then it's just too tricky. So,
well, I think that's what's really probably overlooked a lot of the time is the fact that we have this minimum driver lap in place, whether it be for the main driver or the co-driver. That's fundamentally why the teams adopt the strategies they do. Perhaps if that rule of a minimum driver lap was scrapped, then the strategy options might open up a little further.
But there has to be a rule. You can't just... I mean, the reason why that rule came into place is if you go way back, and this is way back in the files, I think if you go back to Bathurst 86, that's how far back we're going, Alan Grice drove something like 130-odd laps in the Chickadee car.
Good on him.
Graham Bailey, the car owner, did his 25 or 30, who wasn't as fast, who, they got the result, the job was done, but then obviously the race became an international race and having minimum and maximum co-driving laps became a thing. So there's got to be some... I mean, they tweaked the number, but what's the point of having a co-driver then if you don't have to barely use them?
Oh, I thought you were going back to Larry, Perkins and Bill O'Brien, where he did one lap of the race.
One lap at the call to 300 in the Thunderdome race, or the days of Bruce McPhee and Barry Mulholland in the 60s. Bruce McPhee would drive all bar one lap. He would come in, he didn't want to have a co-driver, so under the rules they said, you've got to have a co-driver, so he said, right, stuff you, I'm going to pit, put him in, do a lap, get him in, get him out and keep going. They won the race in 68 that way and was the first Holden to win the great race. So bit to think about in terms of what we can do to tune up the 500k race at the Bend for next year. Now, next one. Who impressed at the Bend? There's quite a list here of people to go through, but I think we all agree that the guy in the black number 99 behind us was a standout there as far as the co-drivers. Yeah,
absolutely. And, Job Stewart was his first time racing in the main game. And looking at the co-driver rankings here, thanks to the bpillar.com, Todd Hazelwood was ranked number 1 in speed and Job Stewart number 2, which put him 22nd overall amongst the main game drivers. And he did a great job, looked at home amongst the main drivers, to be fair. So hats off to Erebus for that strategy choice, but also giving the young bloke a chance.
How much does having that pre-test day at the Bend play into this, because they did run there in the lead-up?
Well, I think we spoke about this on the last show, that, when Moff and I first started, there was not the options to variate your test track, but good on them for using the rules to their advantage. And it wasn't just Erebus that did that. Obviously, even the Blanchard team with Aaron Cameron, anyone that had a rookie driver, Kai Allen with Grove Racing, did a pre-test day there. So certainly it helps. I think also what Moff touched on before, when starting the co-driver, Job didn't have to go through that whole process of getting the car off the line, the first lap shenanigans.
Same theory I had for Matt Stone Racing.
Same thing. Yeah. So, he just jumped in the race, and it's a bit like lining up for a practice session. You just get out there and you focus on your line and length. You don't have to worry about frying the clutch, getting a good start, first lap damage, and he just got on with the job and he did it very well.
On the screen behind us, Moff, is a car behind the Erebus car that had a great day. Nick Percat, Tim Slade. I had them in my bottom group in our last show in terms of a top 10 would probably be a good finish. They went a bit better than that. They ended up P5. To some, that's probably on the list of who impressed. But really, would you be impressed by what Nick Percat and Tim Slade have done there, or would you say, well, absolutely, that's where they should be anyway?
Well, it's not surprising to me, Noons. Slade did a fantastic job in the first stint, dragged that car up to pretty well P5. I know he was behind me for most of the first stint. And, that combination only just missed out on qualifying in the top 10. And clearly, with the speed that the sister team car was showing, the cars were more competitive than we have seen over the last few rounds. So, we've flagged it as a combination that it wouldn't be surprising to see them up there if they had the tools at their disposals. And as a driving combination, they are very solid, and they're going to be in the mix now come Bathurst.
I think you've also got to look at who of the co-drivers got handed a bad rap to start with, i.e. a grid position that was out of phase with where their team and their car would otherwise probably be. Obviously, Jaden Ojeda, we'll touch on Ryan Wood's weekend in just a second, but Scott Pye moved the Will Brown car forward from 16th on the grid, and he was a genuine top 4 or 5 car, and genuinely passed cars along the way. Clearly had car speed to do it, and they were out of sort of where that car should be. But he did a great job to get them into the game and keep Will Brown sort of in the mix for this. Because don't forget the Enduro Cup, if you can be the top point scorer across the 2 races, there's bonus points to go towards your finals points, and if you're not in the 10, you're in if you're the top enduro runner across the 2 rounds. So there's a big chance here, if a few of these top hitters fall apart at Bathurst, for someone to score themselves a finals berth. It's unlikely, but it's possible.
It is possible. And that car 1 combination had a very clumsy Saturday. Will Brown came out, was quickest car by a long way on Friday afternoon, was showing very good speed. The incident...
It helps when you don't get it rearranged by the boss.
Yeah, exactly. So that put them on the back foot clearly for the rest of Saturday and qualifying. But the only thing I would say is that's almost becoming a little bit of a trend for Will Brown is, he's quick on Fridays and he's not able to deliver on that pace come qualifying, especially compared to his teammate. So,
but no one's touching his teammate either.
But yeah, their race pace was very strong.
Yep.
Scott Pye clearly did a good job, was able to drag the car up through the field, and then Will finished off the race. So, yeah, they're certainly still a strong combination if they can have a clean weekend.
The question was who impressed at the Bend, and I just wanted to add what didn't impress at the Bend. We saw a claimed crowd figure of, I think it was 47,000 over 3 days here. I can tell you myself, the V8 Sleuth team, I'm interested for you guys, our passes weren't scanned for 3 days in a row. Did you get scanned? Were you counted in this number?
No. Look, I don't like to sort of bag the situation, but my ticket never got scanned. The 4 people that I was walking in the track with every day, their tickets never got scanned. So I'm not sure where those people were, because I don't reckon 47,000 people were in the vicinity of
3 days. Of 3 days. We should point out that that's the number. So maybe a little bit of work to do there for the facility for next year for the
maybe
500.
Fact checking, potentially.
Crowd numbers are always an interesting thing. Let's move on. Who's kicking themselves after the Bend? I've got a few nominations here, but pretty hard not to go past the guy in car number 1. Jamie Whincup had, a brain melt. I mean, he put his hand up. It's my bad, my fault. I stuffed it up. But the thing that you would learn from Jamie Whincup over his career, and Triple Eight indeed for that matter, when they have a bad weekend, wow, watch the punchback. It's coming at Bathurst.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to me, to be honest, because we call Jamie Whincup the GOAT.
I should say 88. I said car 1.
That's okay.
I made Brock the champion already, didn't I?
We refer to Jamie Whincup as the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. So, his version of not a great weekend was starting on the front row, losing a couple of positions. He was the 3rd fastest co-driver on the pace ranking. So, hey, that's not a bad effort, to be honest. There's a lot more co-drivers behind him, but by his high standards, it certainly was a disappointing weekend for him, and he made mistakes, which is we're not accustomed to with Jamie. But what I will say with the practice crash that he had with his teammate, I was kind of glad that it was Jamie that had that crash, because had it have been a young rookie or someone that maybe didn't have the runs on the board, it might have been, in a conversation a lot different about how it was a driver error, not so much a procedural sort of issue with the safety car stuff.
You feel that could have been really detrimental to the career of a young driver, like we saw Zane Goddard at Bathurst, what was that, 2022 in the early laps at the Chase. You think the same sort of thing?
Oh, 100%, Noons. And the problem is, when young drivers make mistakes, they don't necessarily have something to fall back on as an excuse. They don't have the experience or the championships that they've won, etc. So when a 7-time champion does that, crashes into his teammate in practice, it makes everyone realise if the best driver in the category is arguably capable of doing this, then it could happen to anyone. So I think that's then a reflection on what we're trying to achieve. And look, the safety car procedure, it's going to be a bit above my pay grade, but putting your head down on a dash, trying to see where the lights are, and then look up and try and find a line on the racetrack and regulate your speed around all that. I mean, Jamie Whincup proved what can happen.
And there's nowhere to escape at Bathurst if that's a scenario.
And we're trying to do it. As drivers, we are employed to try and do that as quickly as possible under safety car conditions.
We have that topic coming up very shortly here in the Burning Questions. The other one I want to say who I think's kicking themselves here is Ryan Wood, because the top 10 shootout lap that he had going was on for, front row of the grid there with the way that those sectors were lining up. So he starts 10th. Jaden O'Jada gets boxed around a little bit in the first couple of corners in the first few laps. They managed to recover and grab a 6th, which is handy. But I can't help but feel what that race could have been had he finished that shootout lap off. I think it's very, very different, as we saw the track position and how crucial that was. If that car's starting front row or the second row of the grid even, his result, and remember he's fighting for a spot in the finals here, I reckon he's kicking himself, but I reckon he knows what he needs to tune up. And I reckon he's in the shootout at Bathurst. I mean, he's showing all the signs that last week I put him in that top 7 of the cars to watch. I think that was justified.
Speed-wise, 100%, Noons, they're definitely in the conversation for top 10 shootout at Bathurst. But further to our point at the beginning of the show, that could have been a combination that could have elected to perhaps start Ryan in the car to get the track position back up, for being slightly out of position potentially at the start of the race. Would have put less pressure on Jaden O'Jada when he hopped in the car. But yeah, anyway, that'll probably be a race that they may be thinking that's a better result got away from us based on that issue that he had in the shootout.
Next question's a little bit of a loaded one because I've got a couple of co-drivers here on the desk with me. Should the qualifying races on Saturdays at the 500 make a comeback? You two stand to gain from this, but would you like to see us play the sprint races on Saturday thing or keep the shootout? It was a long, drawn-out day to get to determining the pole position at, the best part of 5:30-ish local time.
Yeah, it's hard because I personally wasn't a fan of the sprint races at Sandown, but the fans loved them. And and I love shootouts as well, but it's probably a circuit thing as well. Like, let's be fair, like the long lap at Tailem Bend and everything, maybe the sprint races would be better suited to that venue as opposed to, I love a shootout at Sandown. I think the fans love racing. So anytime you can put more racing on and potentially have more entertainment, I think it's obviously a good thing, and then it brings the co-driver role into it a lot more as well. So, yeah, I guess like after the weekend, I'm open to any ideas to improve the entertainment of the show, and I think that would be more entertaining.
Look, I think those co-driver races when they were in place at Sandown, it certainly mixed up.
Or did it suit because it was the track?
I think the track layout certainly lent itself to it suiting that more, but you could often see cars qualify in their rightful positions, but then the co-driver might go backwards, might go forwards. So come the 500, because it was a bit of a combination of the two results as to where you started, it wasn't uncommon to see the cars that were in the first couple of rows starting the 500, after qualifying that is, starting the 500 out of position because of various issues in the co-driver race or the main driver race. I remember there was a couple of years there, Jack, that we were in the co-driver race and she started under dry conditions, and one year she hailed on us, like it absolutely came down. Half the field pitted, half the field didn't. So that really mixed things up.
So what we're saying is sprinklers for the bend.
Well,
that's probably where we need to go.
That's the Bernie Eccleston.
That's the Bernie Eccleston view. He always wanted to maybe do that. So anyway, it's something to consider about the scenario for the 500 next year.
One thing, Noons, that I sort of picked up on the shootout, which was probably more evident at the bend, was the time of the shootout.
Of the day.
And just how temperature sensitive and UV sensitive the track is there. So it became very obvious when that shootout started that the cars that were going to run last in the shootout were at a clear advantage. That track was just evolving and getting faster and faster. So maybe if that shootout stays in place at a track like the Bend, we could do with bringing it a bit further forward to have the conditions a bit more consistent, because I think in a way it was just playing the narrative was unfolding in front of our eyes in terms of it wasn't going to be a surprise that the last car to go ended up on pole position.
And determining the pole at 5:30 in the day on a Saturday. I know we do it for the top 10 shootout Bathurst, but that's a different scenario. It's Bathurst, but something to look at anyway. Next one, there's plenty to think about with this one. Will there be safety car chaos at Bathurst? Now, we saw chaos in practice with the system with Jamie Whincup at the Bend. We didn't get a safety car in the race. So we're going to the biggest race of the year on the biggest stage with the biggest audience with a system that's never been used in a race.
Yeah, well, I think if the safety car comes out, there could be chaos, but I've got my doubts whether we'll see many safety cars. I think the way that the race has evolved, the cars are more even, the teams, there's no dud teams, there's no dud drivers per se. What's going to cause a safety car?
Well, we don't get cars breaking down like the old days where, the tilt tray trucks were coming around and trying to pick them up and drag them back to the pit lane. I mean, it's a pretty pro show these days.
Well, and further to that point, last year the safety car at Sandown only came out because a crankshaft failed in Richie Stanaway's car. So arguably, touch wood, it's not going to be, Moff or I, but it's going to take a big failure of sorts, in my opinion, to bring out a safety car. If it's wet, that to me opens up the opportunity for safety cars, because the variable conditions obviously then bring a bit more of the driver and whatnot into it. But I personally don't, and I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think there will be a lot of safety cars.
With Bathurst being so narrow, there's not the runoff like there is at the Bend with the big fields and the big grass areas. There's very little room for error. So now under this scenario, and I'm interested in your take on it, we're basically saying, guys, have at it, except for in this certain part of the track where you can't and you've got to slow right down. Think of the blind corners, the crests, the concrete that hides the next corner. And something that Scott Pye spoke about in terms of something he experienced at the Bend, if you're on the radio, you don't hear the call. because you're trying to talk back to the pits when they're trying to talk to you, so therefore you hear nothing. And that's crucial information that you need to know what's going on the track, wherever it's going on, because suddenly if you come over a crest and that's into the zone and there's a pile of guys, I mean, we saw a scenario there, I think, years ago where one of the BJR cars was catching the safety car train at the top of the hill and got it wrong and slammed into the back of one of the sister cars that was under the speed at the time. That's where the scenario is really worrying for me. But at the end of the day, you said on our first show that the original system is kind of where it should have been. I'd probably say that now that I've seen what they've tried to implement here, wow, there's a lot going on here, but there's a lot of potential for things to go wrong while trying to do what is at its core something right and handle safety.
Yeah, well, I think as an industry we're got to be really careful because we are basically making something complicated that was uncomplicated for
Did we not
for
step
very,
on,
very many years.
Did race control not step on drivers hard enough back in the day when they were racing back to the pits or the control line and going past crashed cars at pretty much full speed? And we wouldn't end up in this situation.
Yeah, look, I'm just a firm believer that that system that has been in place for, let's call it 25 years. I can't recall the last time that at this level of Australian motorsport, anybody crashed under safety car, crashed racing back to the pits. I am a firm believer that you don't want to be reactive to safety. You've got to be proactive. But I think we are really going a step too far here in terms of complicating something that doesn't need to be complicated. And if I'm a fan, if I think about it from a fan point of view, I'm at home on Saturday morning last week. I think, the V8s are on. I'll turn the TV on and practice for the co-drivers has just started. First of all, I'm probably thinking, what the hell's going on here? Like, these guys are driving around and then all of a sudden, two of the Red Bull cars crash into each other because they're racing back to a line to get down to a slow zone.
They're racing to get to somewhere slow.
That is not safe.
So in essence, we're kind of trying to protect the one or two drivers that are involved in the incident, but putting more risk on the other 22, 3, 4, however many there are. Is that how you see it?
And we're getting to a situation where we are obviously being mindful of track marshals, recovery crews, all that. I understand that. That is of high importance. But you're almost forgetting that you're potentially putting the drivers at more risk.
Drivers. Yeah.
So where do you draw the line on what's safe and what isn't safe? To me, we will go through practice, unfortunately, at Bathurst, and we will chew up valuable practice time going through practicing this safety car procedure because it's an unknown.
And what frustrates me about that in particular, and it's not to have a cheap shot at anyone, but when we referenced at driver's briefing about not taking away a little bit more practice from the co-drivers the following day to practice this procedure, the race director, I think it was, said, "Oh, well, you're all professionals." Now that's fine, we are all professionals, but we're actually there to do a job, and we've planned how much practice we've got out weeks in advance. And 10 minutes might not seem like much sitting up in race control, but it's quite a lot of track time. And we don't get a lot of track time. So I don't want to give away my track time at Bathurst to practice something procedurally, but like we saw at the bend, we didn't even have the safety car. So yeah, it is frustrating, and I get it. And every time the drivers question something in the drivers briefing, we were told, hey, this is about safety. I get all that, and Moff touched on it there. Safety is very important, so I get it, but it can't come at the detriment to the show, the drivers getting laps, and what we're actually there for, which is a car race.
The other thing too in all of this, we have not had a safety car free Bathurst 1000 since 1991. We had one safety car last year. We got to about lap 131, I think it was, before Matt Payne made a mistake and crashed at the cutting. So time will tell if this becomes a factor for the 2025 Great Race. Speaking of the race, is the Brock Feedy Jamie Whincup 88 car still the Bathurst favourite despite what happened at the bend?
The worrying thing for me
it's a quick
as
answer,
a competitor is it's not often that team has two
dart events,
bad weekends in a row.
Yep.
So let's put it in perspective. The other car in the team still finished fourth, so it wasn't a horrendous write-off of a weekend for them. And the 88 car was still in a very competitive position, and before it had its fueling issue at the first pit stop. So, yeah, that combination, that team, they are, in my opinion, still the raging favourites heading into the event.
So yes, and yes is probably the answer to that one. My next one, what exactly is parity? Now, it's this is not a new word. This has been going on since the early days of the 5 litre category and the Commodores and the Falcons back in the day. But I know you've got an opinion on this in terms of the way that the Gen 3 cars are. I mean, to some, parity is all 25 cars crossing the finish line at the same time, which is absolutely impossible. Never going to happen. So the aim of the game is to make the cars as close as cars as they can be, with all that time in the wind tunnel and all that testing and all the money that's been spent on this. But the fact that keeps getting forgotten is there are teams in the pit lane that are better than others. Yeah. There are drivers that are better than others and co-drivers that are better than others. So by making the Gen 3 car more same than the cars of previous eras, we've kind of almost got this false default of what is parity. You're never going to get this completely equal. And that's not to say they haven't been putting in awesome work for it, because they have. But the fact is that I think people need to understand what is parity to begin with.
Yeah, and it is a tricky one, Noons, because it gets so much emotion and passion, especially...
Which you want in the game.
Yeah, you look back at 1993 Bathurst, there's a YouTube clip of all the news stories, and there's Dick Johnson talking about the wings getting clipped on the Falcons and all this stuff. So it's not new. First of all, like you say, it's not new. And second of all, I think if you use the weekend as an example where arguably the Fords got given some adjustments, but like our team at Blanchard's, we qualified, at the back end of the 10th, 17th and 18th. We weren't in the top 10 in the race. So then how does it doesn't look like, if you just look at the results, it hasn't actually helped all the Ford teams. So where do you then individualise the parity between the teams, further to your point? So it's a tough one. I think the biggest issue that the category will face is the different architecture between the two engines. One's a 5.4 litre engine, one's a 5.7, one's a single overhead cam, and one's a quad cam. So no matter what you do, they're never going to be the same. Even if you got the performance to within 0.25%, the fuel consumption will be different and things like that. So you're never going to get it. And I think you look at British touring cars, for example, there's different shapes of cars and massive different amounts of parity, but sometimes one person will win one week and the next week they won't win.
But they use weight and they use control engines and they do all sorts of things that supercars don't want to go down those sort of pathways for. So it's a really interesting burning question that will burn. It's been burning for 30 odd years, so it's just going to keep burning no matter what. And we add Toyota to the mix next year. Last one on the burning questions, boys. Who will be the silly season winners and losers? Because there's a fair bit going on up and down the paddock at the moment of wheeling and dealing. And to just give you the kind of the overall synopsis, looks like Jack LeBrock goes from Erebus back to Matt Stone. You'd have to reckon Job Stewart's put himself in the right spot to get that second Erebus seat.
James, part one of his audition.
Tick. Yeah, absolutely nailed that. Blanchard's James Golding's been linked from leaving Premier to go to Blanchard's. Of course, James Courtney is retiring at the end of the year, Jack. I think he has said that it's definite. And it looks like Jaden O'Jade is going to get a chance full-time at Premier Racing and potentially with Declan Fraser there. So should all those moves happen, who's winning and losing out of all of this?
Well, one thing for sure, Noons, is this is peak silly season. And it's always kicks off around this time.
Oh, it's been going for a while, but it escalates now.
There's two teams there that straight away sort of pop out in terms of potentially having double driver changes in MSR and Premier Racing.
And of course, Cam Hill looks like everyone's saying Brad Jones Racing is where he's going.
So that opens potentially. We're hearing unfortunately that Nick Percat might be on the outer there at MSR as well,
despite having a contract for another couple of years.
Yeah, so potentially two new drivers for that team, and then also, again, I understand that situation to be the same at Premier Racing with Richie Stanaway, even though a contract is in place. It sounds like there might be a double driver change on the cards there as well. And just this week, it sort of has been highlighted that they're not necessarily locked into race Camaros either next year. So, which
we thought was the case. Like all the noise was that Peter Shiveris would stick with the Camaros for next season. But in all of that, I think of all those potential moves, if they all play out, Jaden O'Jade getting a full-time opportunity is exciting because he brings a flair, he brings a speed. He's kind of done everything he can do to earn a spot at this. Now he's going to, by the smell of it, get his opportunity. So I think that could be a real opportunity because that team's had a really poor season. So let's see how it all plays out. Lots of burning questions.
Sorry,
but hard to get the answers.
Cut in on you, but one thing about those Premier cars on the weekend, that livery they rolled out,
yeah, it was good.
Was spot on. They looked really sharp, those cars. So well done to everybody involved.
Peter Hughes, the designer who we've worked with a lot over the years, put those together. A bit of a HRT retro flair for the Camaros. That wraps up our burning questions.
The perfect way to prepare for the Repco Bathurst 1000 is to grab your copy of the official program for this year's great race. Packed with driver profiles and plenty of features on the present and past stars of the mountain, this 144-page publication is a must to add to your collection. Fans have been collecting these program keepsakes dating all the way back to the first race in 1963. And now is the time to grab your copy of the 2025 edition. Let's go! It's available now online from the V8 Sleuth Superstore and via a range of newsagents around Australia in the lead up to the Repco Bathurst 1000.
Time for some one-way traffic here on the Undercut. And I thought, given that we're on the pathway to the Bathurst 1000, we've got two panellists who've done plenty of Bathurst 1000s. Boys, I thought we'd rewind the clock here and go back to your very first opportunities at the Great Race. I'll start with you, Jack. So we're going to 2006 here, so we're nearly 20 years ago. We're going back to VZ Commodore era. We're going back to the super cheap auto Bathurst 1000 as it was known then. Fair to say your Bathurst debute's been covered a little bit over the journey, though.
Yeah, it has. Look, that's the start of the race. That's Stephen Richards, my teammate in the Jack Daniels Commodore, hard up against the wall.
There you are.
There's you.
Yeah, there I am back there. I just about nearly put Anthony Tratt in a fence there, and I thought, I'll stay out of this. It's the first lap of the Great Race.
And there's a red Commodore going slowly here.
And it's unbelievable, Noons. This is the day that I made a lot of Ford fans, and unfortunately, I didn't see Scafey there, and I got on the radio and said to the guys, I think I've just hit Jim Richards because he was in the other HRT car. And before I knew it, my first Bathurst was over before it really started. And I didn't want to walk back, so I'd made sure I could drive it back.
I think you scraped it back.
And then, look at Scafey's car there. They were the favourites. And obviously there's a lot of emotion around this Bathurst. It was just after Peter Brock had passed away. That car had the black bonnet and was the favourite, started off pole position. And I wish I could go back 20 years and do it all over again, Noons, because it seems like a lifetime ago. But, you can't change history. But obviously, it's not the way you wanted your first Bathurst to go. I just wanted to log laps that day and get to the finish. But, we barely got off the line. So
you were on double duty that weekend because the development series was running as well. So it's your first time at Bathurst. You're getting lots of laps and lots of seat time in a, same but different car. It wasn't the same car you're running in the 1000. But that same weekend, obviously, we had the tragic accident with Mark Porter, who was in the development series around that weekend. So tell me about your mindset in how that was all going, because there was a lot. We had Peter Brock's death, a month before Bathurst. Mark Porter's crashes on the Friday. You're in the race that you've always wanted to get your way into at, age 20, 21 or thereabouts. There was a lot going on to get your head around.
Yeah, there was, Noons. And, I think about it now as you talk about all the things that happened that weekend. And, I just turned 20, so I was 19 turning 20. Couldn't drive a V8 on the road, but...
you put your name on your car just so you knew which one was yours.
That's right. But I remember it so vividly. The first day on the Thursday in the practice, I did a 2:18 in the first session. And I thought, wow, I'm a long way off the pace. And then by the second session, I did a 2:11 and I was fastest in that session. And in this race here, I was actually stalled in the first race and went way back. And in the second race, started wherever I didn't finish third. But yeah, the Mark Porter stuff, I think about it now, it's terribly sad because, he was stricken on the track and I went past him and someone behind didn't. And it's a reminder of just what can happen in the sport. And it's pretty ordinary, but, I remember Dad dragging us aside and just said, this is what happens, and it happened to him in Formula One. There's 5 or 6 people that didn't make it through. And yeah, they're not great memories, but they're points in time that we can't go back on, and it's a reflection moment.
When did you know that you were going to make your Bathurst 1000 debut? Did you have to kind of earn your spurs during that development series year for your dad to say, okay, you've done your time, we're going to put you in the car, or was it kind of always the plan?
I don't know if it was always the plan. I think you've got to remember back then you didn't have to keep your main drivers in separate cars. So, you know, the lead drivers of a two-car team would always hop in the primary car, and then the second car was, you know, typically made up of part-timers or even overseas drivers and things like that. So because myself and Shane Price were driving in the Dunlop series, I guess if we were showing signs that we were capable, we were going to get the nod. And I think when we did get the nod, we'd both got a couple of podiums already that year in Super 2, and I guess the team thought it was a logical move. And the cars were so close technically back then, you know, they were the same cars, same tyres. We could test for the main game teams, you know, we tested different uprights and shockers and things like that. So, yeah, I guess it was logical. But if we'd crashed and bashed and got no success, I don't think we would have been given the nod. But then equally the team had to go and find some drivers on top of that, so I guess it probably saved Dad a few bucks as well by sticking us in there.
There's a couple of blokes hanging around the workshop looking for a gig. Moff, let's go to 2010. So this is the first year of not having full-timers drive together. The drivers were all split from that point onwards. You got your chance with Steve Richards, so a Richards and a Moffat together at Bathurst is pretty cool. Were you locked in for this? Because you were doing the development series in an FPR run car that year. Was that all part of the same deal?
Yeah, that's correct. So I had done 2009, I raced for Sonic Motor Racing in the development series, and then for 2010 switched over to FPR, and we ran a car in the development series out of Campbellfield there. And yeah, part of that, I guess, deal to do that development series program was to drive one of the factory Ford cars in the endurance races. And it probably wasn't from memory until about mid-year that I knew that I was going to be driving with Richo, and I look back at that with really fond memories to think that I had the opportunity to drive alongside Stephen Richards, who's gone on to win 5 Bathursts, is one of the legends of the sport. So personally, that was obviously a culmination of getting to compete in the biggest race in the country, which was a lifelong dream. And that's I guess secondly to all that, to represent the factory Ford team in my first Bathurst start, that's something that I look back on now, being quite proud of. But when you're in that moment, you don't really think too much of it. You just want to be able to do the best job you can. And that was the start of where we are today.
Yeah.
So,
top rookie finisher in the race. You might not remember that, but you guys finished 11th. But that was also an interesting time for Richo, because that was his last year full-time with FPR. Could you see stepping in there even as a rookie that, because he left at the end of the season, they had some turmoil, I think, at the Gold Coast that year. Oh, hello, there's
the baby
there's
face.
young James. There's young James. It was a tough time. I remember Richo was really struggling at that point.
Yeah, look, I think that's probably fair to say that Richo was certainly probably on the outer there. For a few reasons, but and that really sort of kicked off after Bathurst at the Gold Coast race, where there was a bit of a cluster in pit lane with
where there was no driver ready for a car and all sorts of stuff.
There was a few heads that rolled after that from memory, but I suppose when I was in the moment, I was working at the team as well. I worked on my development series car, so I was probably more focused on that side of things and trying to do as well as I could. Because there was a little bit of a carrot dangled in front of me that, if I performed well enough, that there was potentially an opening for a full-time drive the following year, which never eventuated with that team. I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity with DJR and moved up to the Gold Coast and drove with DJR for 2011 and 2012.
It's good to look back at some of this stuff over the journey. It's great to look back at some of these photos as well from the archives. Next up, though, it's time for our City Rural Insurance Brokers Classic Car. City Rural are the go-to for your insurance needs. And this week, we're looking at a very special car in the history of the Supercars Championship. You're in the Rick Kelly Championship winning HSV dealer team Commodore Tell me about this car, because this one features predominantly in V8 Supercar history files.
Correct, Noons. This car is a VZ 2006 model. Was brand new for 2006. Rick's car the whole year. Obviously, he had a bit of trouble here at the last round, but still got through to win the championship.
Why do you think that event, that weekend, still sits in the minds of so many people?
Oh, a lot of people are Craig Lowndes fan, and he got rid of him to win the championship, so I guess that's where it's at. But yeah, it's a great car. Obviously, the only car to win all 3 championships, Super 3, Super 2 and Main Series, so it's a pretty cool car.
Do you remember that day at Phillip Island in 2006? Where were you watching? What do you remember of that infamous championship decider?
Yeah, I was sitting at home watching on TV, and at that point, I was a Holden man, but I still really like Craig Lowndes. So I didn't think much of it, and then to have it now is a bit surreal. But yeah, it's good. We've had it for 10 years now, so it's it's a really good car.
Tell me about how you make these things how they were back in the day. You've got a really high level of like how you like to restore things and do things. Tell me specifically about this car, the panels, the parts in it. How close to 2006 is it?
This one really close. Obviously, the Gilbertos took all the bodywork off it when they purchased it from Walkinshaws, used it. We did the same when we purchased it, and then we restored it back to obviously with all the original bodywork. And then I got the engine from Walkinshaws, which I picked out the number. There's the one that crossed the finish line here on Sunday, so I got the original engine number, and it got the whole thing rebuilt to 2006 spec, and the rest of it was still really 2006 when I got it. So everyone along the line that had it did a really good job, and we've just preserved it and used it, and it's been good.
What's this thing like to drive? These things have evolved so much over time. You raced in sort of around that period in similar V8 supercars, but what's this thing like to drive compared to the more modern cars?
I think it's really good. The H-pattern gearbox, I absolutely love it. So good, skipping gears and all that sort of stuff, and obviously misshifting a couple, but it's really good fun. I love it. The new cars are really good with sequential, but I love the H-pattern and the old school stuff, so it's really cool to drive. I love it.
You run Super 2, you've got young drivers developing. It's a thing that you've been doing for a long time, but why do you love the history? What is it that strikes a chord with you with this era of these types of cars?
I don't know, really. Obviously growing up near Bathurst and obviously going to the races all the time, and I just fell in love with it, and I just absolutely love the old cars. Older the better, really. Mid-90s are my thing, and then it ranges up to sort of this level. Into the new ones a bit, but mid-90s to 2000s is where it's at for me. I just got a huge passion for it, and I love seeing them correct, but also being used, and it's great.
It would clearly be easier to just park them up, put them under a cover, protect their value, but you don't agree with that. You're all about getting them out for not just to have a run, but for fans to see too.
100%, yeah. We've got a couple that we will never use as such. They're restored really, really well. They won't get used, but we'll have them on display every now and then, but all the rest of them, 100% we'll use them. Bathurst winners or championship winners, whatever they are, I think it's important to get them out, use them, and we spend so much on them to get them race ready. If you don't use them in 3 years' time, they're no good again. So you need to get them out, use them a bit. Like I always say, if you scratch them, you dent them, whatever, we'll just fix it again. We restored it once, we'll do it twice.
What's the plan for the future for this car? Is there a way that we can convince Rick Kelly to make himself available for a weekend to be reunited with this thing?
Oh, I guess so. I actually spoke to Rick about it a couple of years ago, and he actually likes the other one over there, the car one, a bit more than this one for some reason. But Rick's really loves it. I think he'd be keen to have a drive one day. But the plan for it is just to preserve it, look after it, and enjoy it and get it out for events like Phillip Island Stories.
Great to chat with Ben Eggleston. He and his team do some amazing work restoring some of the most important V8 supercars. And Jack, you know fully well, because you've worked with that team before on not just driving their cars, but in some of those restos and working with Ben on all sorts of bits and pieces.
Yeah, he's a good man, Ben, and both himself and his wife Rachel run a fantastic business where they run the Super 2 cars, but also restore cars and run those old cars at different events. So you won't find anyone more passionate than Ben. He loves the Holden stuff in particular, and he's a good fella to match. So really cool to see him there running that old rocket, and I think we'll see him around at a few more of those events moving forward.
It's 20 years next year since Rick Kelly won that championship at Phillip Island in 2006. It's the only car to win all 3 levels. It won the Development Series with Tony D'Alberto in 2006. 2007, and then Justin Rougier won the Kumho V8 Touring Car Series that later became Super 3. So a big thank you for the support too of City Rural Insurance Brokers, Andrew Bender and the team. They've been on the scene since 1995, a great year by the way for Perkins Engineering at Mount Panorama. They can help you with your insurance for business, transport, trades, farming and much, much more. Jump on and talk to them now for a quote. Get online and you can catch them at cityrural.au. They are your insurance pit crew for all of your needs. Right, time to stop, time to start again. It's time for the workbench. Well, the Supercar finals are closing right on in, and there are some drivers who are locked in for their fight over the 3 rounds and 7 races that will complete the rest of the championship season. But I want to have a look at who's locked and who's not locked and who could find a lock at Bathurst in a couple of weeks' time. Let's take a look at the graphic of who's locked in for how they sit coming into the great race. We've got a lock in the top left corner, so they are definitely going nowhere. Brock Feeney, Matt Payne, Will Brown, they are all in from Queensland Raceway. Brock's the Sprint Cup winner. Matt and Will both with enough points that they were safe before the bend. And then what unfolded at the bend has allowed us to lock in a few more players. So 6 are in of the 10. Cam Waters is in, the runner-up from the bend. Chaz Mostert's in despite a tough run on Sunday. And of course the bend winner, Brodie Kostecki, the reigning Bathurst 1000 champ, has locked his way in. So there's 6 in. There's 4 spots on the line. And I wanted to step through who else there could be. I reckon Anton De Pasquale is looking the goods. So you can see there he's 191 above the top 10 cutoff line. But the thing that sticks out to me, boys, he's had 9 top 10s from his last 9 races, including 2 podiums. That team's getting their stuff together at the right end of the year.
Yeah, they are. And I think, you know, based on the trajectory, and without knowing all the calculations off the top of your head, because anything can happen, but a top 10 at Bathurst should see these guys straight through. Their performance has definitely been increasing. I think there's a bit of chat about, you know, the fact that Jeremy Moore's now back at GM, having left
influence.
Yep. And the timing around him kind of departing his gardening leave and the timing of Team 18 going better, potentially lining up, but obviously it takes a lot more than just set up sheets and bits and pieces. So yeah, I think that team will need to improve and keep improving because they are going to be the factory GM team.
The one little thing that I have as a little bit of an asterisk next to their name, and they can prove us wrong here, their record at Bathurst is ordinary in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. I mean, they ran themselves out of fuel there a couple of years. They've definitely beefed up their brain power going to Bathurst. I think Anton's in. I think he makes it in, being that far in front of the cutoff line. The next guy I'm also putting in, we've talked about Ryan Wood. He's 8th at the moment. He's 157 clear of the cutoff. He's had a couple of podiums this year. He's fast. His error rate's a little bit high. Now's not the time to keep that rate going. No,
but, you know, he's got speed on his side, Noons, and, you know, that's what we're all chasing fundamentally is speed. So, you know, he has a comfortable margin to the sort of cut line, if you want to call it that. But, you know, a clean weekend for that combination definitely puts him in a strong position to progress through to the finals.
And there's a very interesting thing here that hasn't been picked up on by some people. We talk about the 300 points to win race, and that's very much still the case. 276 for second, but once you go from third down, the numbers are different this year from the previous years of the weighting of the points. So you could be a driver that ended up finishing in the race at Bathurst last year and getting a certain number of points, and you get about 6 or 7 or 8 points less this year. You might miss a final spot that you otherwise would have got under the old point system. So that's something to not be caught out by when you're looking up the points and following who's in for Bathurst. 9th at the moment coming in is Thomas Randall. The numbers have been going against him in the last part of the season, but he's 99 points clear of the cutoff. He's got a good co-driver there. I've never heard of that fella before, but he seems to go all right. 3 top 10s from his last 5 races. At 99 points above the cutoff, he's probably in the zone of, well, he's going to need to have a bad day, and Kai Allen, for example, is going to have a good day to jump him.
Yeah, and, you know, I guess that's probably going to be one of our focuses in the lead up to the weekend is, you know, making sure that we have everything in place that we can be hopefully comfortably in that top 10, you know, have a good fast car underneath us that's predictable, easy to drive across the day. But I know that's certainly a focus of Thomas and the teams is to, first of all, make the finals. And I think the improvement over the last couple of rounds in terms of some consistent top 10 results puts us in a position where we can go to the mountain being confident that if we execute the cars underneath us, then we're more than capable of finishing in a position that allows Thomas to progress into the finals.
So let's have a look at who runs in 10th at the moment. And Kai Allen's been the surprise packet. He's come storming through in the last couple of rounds. He's been on the podium. He's had 4 podiums, which if you'd said at the start of the year that Kai Allen was having 4 podiums, we would have said, wow, that's probably above where we'd expect him to be. He's right on the fringe here in 10th. He could very well sneak 2 Grove cars into the finals, which at the start of the year, if you said Kai was going to be in the top 10 on points in his rookie season as a main gamer, you would have said, wow, that's a big result. He's a big chance for this.
He is, and he's done really well, like you say, to get on the podium. Well, not just once as a fluke. He's been on the podium there now, and he looks right at home, running competitively. They probably fell victim of the 4-stop strategy a little at the bend, so that then comes back onto the team because you can't afford to have that strategy go wrong at Bathurst and potentially miss out on the finals. And something that's important, just thinking about what we've been chatting with these 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, a lot of them have got teammates that are already locked in.
Yeah.
Let's say you're in a position where Matt Payne can't win the race, but he's got track at Bathurst. He's got track position over Kai Allen. Do you switch that around? Does the team say, hey...
If they're nose to tail?
If Matt Payne's running 5th, Kai Allen's running 6th or 7th and it doesn't look like Matt can win, you can't afford Kai Allen to double stack in pit lane or something and lose all that track position and then finish 11th in the points and not get into the finals. So I think there'll be a few other spreadsheets floating around with the engineers at Bathurst that might have these points on them, because if it's not your day to win the Bathurst 1000, you've got to make sure that you can get your second teammate into the finals, because that becomes a more important play than finishing 5th at Bathurst.
It's a great point, that one we haven't really explored too much. So Tickford have got 1 in, 1 out. Red Bull have 2 in. Walkinshaws have 1 in and 1 out on the cusp. Groves are the same. So there could be some added storylines in how this all plays out. And if teams don't know this coming in, they really need to get onto it in the next couple of weeks, because, look, let's face it, if Kai Allen is in the 10 and does make it through, do we think he can genuinely win the championship? Probably not. But could he finish 4th or 5th in the championship instead of being consigned to 11th at best? It's well worth it. And you don't know what these guys have got in their bonuses too for their contracts and where they're going to finish. There might be some more money on the line here.
But the other thing to also consider in all that is, those 6 cars that are locked in already to the finals, is what priority do they put it on in terms of going for the Ryco Enduro Cup that gives them the 25 bonus points?
Which you've got to be top point scorer across the 2 races.
Yes. So you've got to weigh that up as well in team land potentially too. So, but Jack's point is good. You've got You've got Tickford, Walkinshaws, and Groves that all have cars locked in. One of their cars locked in, and then their team cars are on the bubble, if you like.
There's some pocket pool to be played here, to use the old term. Andre Heimgartner, let's take a look at the Kiwi for Brad Jones Racing. He's on the outside, not by much. He's 11th. He's 18 points away from the cut line, but a horrible bend where they finished last after some contact early on. He hasn't finished on the podium this year. He's had 1 top 10 from his last 7 races. He's only ever made the shootout at Bathurst once, and that was last year. If he's a shot to get in, he's got to qualify in the shootout, which has not been something that over the years he's done. I'd be more worried for him at the moment than I am for Nick Perkins or Cameron Hill.
Well, yeah, for me, probably where Andre now sits after the bend is a little bit more indicative of their championship position. Prior to the bend, he was inside the top 10.
We would be saying he was probably safe if he finishes 10th at the bend.
Yeah, so anyway, Brad Jones Racing knows how to deliver fast, consistent cars at the Bathurst 1000. Granted, they might have not done that for the last few years.
In Gen 3, they haven't.
So, the pressure is on that combination to have a fast car underneath them. But the ones, to me, based on form, are the MSR cars, and potentially them squabbling amongst each other to get in.
And there's an interesting complete scenario where you've got one team with 2 cars trying to get in here. So they're going to try to leapfrog each other all day. How do they manage that? How do they play that? They've got 2 drivers who look like they're not going to be there next year. So that's a whole other element to that scenario. Nick Perkins at the moment sits 12th in the points. A great run at the bend has brought him right towards the cut line. He's 37 off here. He's not far away. Highly experienced co-driver in Tim Slade. How they play this is going to be interesting. But, I mean, he had a rough day at Bathurst last year, whereas his teammate Cam Hill actually ended up in the top 10. So if we look at Cam Hill, who is just behind 13th, he's only 51 off the cut line as well with Cameron McLeod co-driving. So there's all sorts of possibilities on how this might play out. And that is kind of a shame in the way that this will play out, because we're going to be talking all about the driver, the team, the car that wins the great race, the Repco Bathurst 1000. All of these elements of who's booked their ticket to the 10 will kind of not get much of a run, and that's why I really think we need to determine the 10 before we go to Bathurst, because no one's going to get the attention. It'll be an afterthought on the lead up to the Gold Coast.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch it all unfold, because there's going to be more than just the one battle for the race, isn't there? There's going to be a battle for the Ryco Endurance Cup. There's also going to be a battle for getting a spot in the finals.
There's a lot of battles.
There is, but I think momentum's a big thing, and I think Cam Hill and Andre Heimgartner probably lost some momentum from earlier in the year, and like Nick Perkins off his strong result at the bend and knowing they've got confidence in their co-drivers, I think that's going to play an important part for Nick's quest here. And I guess there's also not a lot of pressure. Currently they're not in, so it's kind of like, well, what have we got to lose here? If it's a strategy call, roll the dice. Equally, if they've got a good car, they'll be confident of actually going for an outright result at Bathurst.
But how about if they're running nose to tail and pit priority becomes a big important matter? That's going to be a whole pile of fun when you've got 2 cars trying to get in.
That'll be spicy, there's no doubt.
We love a bit of spice. We're all good with it. There's plenty to discuss on the workbench. On our next show, I've got another topic about how I think we need to change the testing rules in supercars, but that's for the next episode. That is the workbench here on the Undercut.
I could go a Mose, go a Mose, go a Mose, go a Mose. You do the high bit. Go a Mose, go a Mose, go a Mose, go a Mose. What's the price, Cat? $3. Get some. Go a Mose.
Only $3, yeah.
Go a Mose. Go a Mose mouth-watering hot dog, $3 anytime.
What?
At OTR.
Time now for our top 5 fueled by Shell OTR, and on this episode, we're going into the files with some magic moments from Touring Car Masters. Terry Waihoon, the Image Racing Super 2 team boss, made a one-off on the Gold Coast and 3 wheels on the wagon.
Put the inside wall there, Noonan. Plucked the left front out of it.
I'd never have known Terry raced TCM, but yeah, Moff's right. Good call, Moff. Lift the apex wall on the left-hand side, and there goes the left front.
Number 4, this is Steve Makarios. Oh, Darwin.
The cameraman did not flinch.
No, stuck throttle sends the Falcon into the fence.
Look at him.
And the cameraman does not move. Well played. Sorry to Steve, because that Ford was heavily rearranged up in the top end back in 2009. Number 3, on board here with Jim Richards, but he's not the problem. The pace is the problem. Cam Tilley in the lead.
That's the moment Jimmy has on the exit.
And that car was on its way to winning its first TCM race when that happened. And wait for more, Keith Kasuki, parallel parks in Main Beach.
Yeah, not ideal, and I cringed at some of these old cars crashing them, Noons, because finding parts for them is very challenging, but good memories here. These are some good...
Well, not if you drove the Pacer, definitely not a good memory. Let's have a look at the game. Boom, up it goes.
That's had the big engine disassembly and it's pouring oil out onto the road and onto the back tyres.
Could be worse, could be this. Andrew Medicki moves out, Glenn Seaton's there, wild ride.
Yeah, this was massive. Like, you're still doing probably 260, 270 Ks here in these old girls.
And look at Brett Yilden in the green Monaro, up against the wall, makes it through on the grass.
Yeah, that's wild. Look at this. This is a good slow-mo shot here. Look at the front of that, just crush in.
Off the ground at 275 going backwards.
Yeah, you can have that.
Yeah, I'm good. This is number 1. Most of the field in this one. Bill Pye. Brad Tilley parked in the middle. What happens next? Wait for it. We're not done. Watch for Nigel Benson.
Hold on, mate.
He finally finishes the accident off down at the centre chicane back in 2014, where the rolling start caught them out. It could have been a lot worse. Kerry McMahon and the Tirana there, just propped.
Yeah.
And carnage.
That's all it took, just that bit of prop took the momentum out of that lane, and then look at this. Oh, there's a few there. Might have been a bit asleep at the wheel. Look at hang on to it.
Well, let's ride on board, and that's the contact from the green Ford. And that is our top 5, fueled by Shell OTR. Time to pull the plug on this episode of The Undercut, and it's our chance to take a look at plugging some material. A stack of new releases are rolling into the V8 Sleuth Superstore at this stage of the year. Christmas is coming, Bathurst is coming. That's kind of Christmas for car racing fans, including Jess Yates' first foray into the publishing world. Have a look at this. This is new. It's out now. It's her kids' book. It's Let's Go Racing. You can get it from our superstore.v8sleuth.com.au website. It has been getting some testing miles at the Bend. There was a range of copies handed out, and this was pre-race prep for you, Jack and James.
Yes, it was, Noons, and Jess actually came around and gave us a copy of this book for our kids, and James and I thought it'd be great reading before qualifying day at our Airbnb at the Bend to read up on it, and it was a great job from Jess, actually. I've read that book now multiple times to my children, and it's a ripper.
Say, does it get a regular run of the Perkins household now?
Yeah, it's a ripper. My son's more into it than my daughter, so yeah, pretty cool.
Well, I've got a publication for you when you get sick of reading that book to your kids, because the official program for the great race, the Repco Bathurst 1000, is out now. 144 pages, full of gloss, full of info, full of stats, full of all the history and current stuff that you need to know to impress all those great race fans. You know, there's always a bit of Bathurst trivia going on in the lead up. You can get it from online on our Superstore at the moment, and it's back in news agencies around the country from as we speak at the moment, so you can grab it wherever you might be. Of course, Channel 7, free-to-air televisers and telecasters of the great race, the Repco Bathurst 1000. Expanded coverage this year beyond the 3 days of on-track action Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There is a preview show, Jack, and you are steering it up.
Yeah, I'm in the host seat for that one, Noon. So we do a Repco Bathurst 1000 preview show. Myself, Mark Winterbottom and Garth Tander, we get to catch up and sort of have a good look over the race. So looking forward to that one. That's on October 5 on 7, 7 and then obviously the big one, the Repco Bathurst 1000, where we're looking forward. It's always a ripper every year, mate.
And Brodie Kostecki, Todd Hazelwood, both on the show. Cam Waters on the show as well. Greg Murphy even dials into the show as well, so we could ask him about, I guess, did you talk to him about the ad?
Yes, yeah, we got to ask him. I wanted to know what him and Ambrose got to talk about 20 years on when they reunited at the cut-in, but Murph played a straight bat with that answer, I'm sure. But yeah, it was it's going to be good to catch up with Murph and see what he thinks of this year's Bathurst.
Just quickly before we go to Perkins Engineering merch, we've got the cap here on the desk, here on the Undercut. You can head to perkinsengineering.com.au Noons. We've got plenty of gear on there. Perkins Engineering merch. Thanks, Moff, for the modelling here. It's, some of the best hand modelling I've seen.
And there's
this year.
Car parts, memorabilia, all sorts of stuff on there, Noons.
Jack's Crazy Emporium. He does deals for everybody. Gents, we're out of time here on The Undercut for another week. The good news is, though, that we have another show before the Repco Bathurst 1000. Big thanks to Shell OTR for their support, to City Rural Insurance Brokers as well. We'll catch you next time on The Undercut as we count down to the great race at Mount Panorama.